And hello, everyone. Welcome to the WARPburg Infusion Entertainment Review. It's time for episode 62. Here for March 2nd, I'm one of your hosts, Thomas, a.k.a. MrWartburg. Alongside me, as always, is Patrick, a.k.a. Mr. Fusion.
Greetings and salutations on this 3223, everybody.
Yeah,
That's when we're recording, not when you're listening. You may be listening down the road, or if you are some weird, crazy time traveler before 3223. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe you are John. Maybe John Teeter's downloading this podcast now.
Yeah, who knows? And it's somehow already March. March Madness is almost here.
2 weeks away, man.
Yeah,
2 weeks on the money.
2 weeks. I'm excited. I'm ready.
Yeah, yep.
We got so much awesome content this month. Like, we're starting off strong. March 1, we had Mando. 2 weeks from yesterday, we've got Ted Lasso, John Wick, Shazam. There was Creed 3's coming out this weekend. That's just on the movie side.
Yep.
Plus some of the, like I said, the streaming shows. Picard's still rolling. Last of Us finale's coming up. We got a lot of great stuff, and I think Succession's right around the corner too.
I think so. Yeah. I think it's the end of this month. Yeah.
Like, it is just nonstop bangers every single week. There is
Other big thing is we got Oscars in a couple weeks too, so let's see what happens with everything everywhere all at once. I do want to talk about like what they did at the SAG Awards this weekend.
Oh, very true, very true. So where do you want to start tonight? Obviously we usually do our normal intros, what we're watching and playing. You want to start there?
Let's start there. I'm going to hand it over to you this time, man. What have you been watching and playing?
Big thing watching is, like I said, Picard season 3.
Okay.
It is an absolute revelation from where they were in seasons 1 and 2. Like, season 2 had moments where it's like, okay, they're working with something, right? Like, they're figuring out what the heck to do with 7 of 9. Like, Jerry Ryan is still awesome in that role. But it was way more misses than hits. Season 3 has been not just the exact opposite. And it's not perfect. It's still got flaws, don't get me wrong. But it has been damn good television. And it's hitting all the right notes with all the legacy cast, plus some newcomers to the show that I'm gotta imagine they're setting up a spinoff here with the Titan crew. It's just been a breath of fresh air from what we wanted, or from what we were expecting, I should say. It is what everyone wanted. It's a reunion season, and it's exactly what Patrick Stewart said he didn't want as Picard. But shocker, it's what works. Because the show worked. The first show, Next Generation, worked. And then going back to that well, with actors that are still really good, shocker, it works. But it's not just a TNG reunion show, because now we're working in some Deep Space Nine villains. We're continuing some Deep Space Nine arcs for Worf, who is some standout, like, hilarious lines. So he's wearing this, like, leather warrior outfit and just, like, trying to blend into a crowd. And someone's like, "Is that what you're wearing?" He's like, "It's casual." And then they're like, "So what, are beheadings on Tuesdays?" And then he ends up killing a guy, and he's like, "No, beheadings are on Wednesdays." Like, epic stuff.
So because did they ramp up the humor a little bit with him a little bit? Because is he more of a Drax type than he was?
I would say he's more. Imagine if he refined that dry sense of humor he has in Deep Space Nine.
Okay.
Like, his delivery is just like, it's so on point. Like, it's so dry that it's funny, but he also knows it's funny now. Like, he's like, he's purposefully doing it now. And it's a nice subtle, like, continuation of where he was in that show. And man, is it great to see Worf get to cut loose without having to worry about television, like, censors. Because he just fucking wrecks dudes in episode 2. Just, like, cutting heads off, it's not a batleth, it's the other, like, it's kind of a sword weapon that they have, just right through dudes' chests, and it's just bloody. That's awesome. Really digging this show so far.
Okay.
So I'm definitely saying you don't even have to have gotten into the show before, because it's hard to watch. Season 1 especially. Season 2, it's got some fun stuff, especially with 7, but they go to a weird place in the finale. Season 3, you can kind of just basically start. And the only thing you need to know is Picard's kind of helped mentor 7 of 9. And, like, gotten her back into Starfleet. And that's it. That's all you really need to know. She was kind of an outlaw renegade working on the Federation frontier to, like, help people Starfleet kind of withdrew from helping on their worlds. And then she felt like Starfleet kind of let her down. It did. And then Picard got her back, and that's all you really need to know. Other than that, you can start in season 3. And I think that's been really successful.
I've been meaning to sit down and watch Picard, man, and I guess I'll jump in now while
I highly would while this season's hot.
Yeah.
so you don't spoil anything because it's
Yeah.
setting up for some fun stuff. So, and
Okay.
continuing, I've been started playing Fortnite with you.
Yep.
We'll continue that here on Twitch because we're live over at twitch.tv/MrWartburg, where you can follow every other week or maybe every week, like this week, where we recorded our podcast just last week for episode 61. Because, like I said, March is full of so much content.
Yeah.
And we're going to try to squeeze this in around basketball games. So schedules might get weird, especially as the first weekend hits in 2 weeks. It's going to be nuts. But that first weekend is just magic.
Yeah.
4 days of just pure basketball nirvana. Love it. Speaking of games, I bought Legend of Dragoon
Okay.
on the PlayStation Store, so I might stream that tomorrow. But I also bought a Secret Labs chair. I'm replacing this one. The seat's kind of falling apart. I had to replace the armrest a couple of times. It's time. It was $150. Lasted me 2.5 years. And I just can't put in enough WD-40 to stop it from squeaking. So it's time. I'm gonna keep it. So it's like Joey. It'll be like Joey's like sick co-chair when we do streams and stuff. Because he's probably gonna come out. We'll probably do Dead Space eventually this year. But I might do a chair building stream tomorrow. I think that
Okay.
is probably
Okay.
in the cards. So other than that, I've been continuing my Forbidden West New Game Plus. I'm gonna slowly go through that. Maybe just do the main story and get done. Upgrade all my weapons and everything, and then kick on over and start my ultra hard run, which is going to be nuts. I've never done a game like that, other than maybe Elden Ring and Sekiro, with like the hard mode being the intent of why we're doing it. Even Lasso, like it just kind of doesn't count because it's a group thing.
Yeah.
So, how about you, man? What are you up to?
So I've been playing a little Warzone, a little more Warzone 2 since the new season came out. Not a whole lot like I did with season one, but I wanted to test things out. They did a little bit of tweaking with like the care packages and loadouts because that was a big complaint of how they kind of revamped that whole thing, the whole system. But it's an okay game. But then we got back into Fortnite, and which is great because we've been talking about, hey, we need to think about group games here, guys. What about what we were throwing out ideas, what to play here, what to play here. Like, what about Fortnite? They have a non-build mode. Okay, that's really that was really outside of it being just really overly colorful. The big thing from the big thing to catch a problem for me was the fact that the building kind of killed the battle royale. So but the no build had a lot of fun. I've been dipping into solo no build matches here and there since we've
I
been
was gonna
playing
say I
as a
saw you
group.
were playing earlier today.
Yeah. There's an Adonis Creed skin that's out for the movie, man. You got to go get it, man.
I
It's
might
cool.
because it's a good skin. The alt
Yeah,
one with the robot's arms is dope.
yeah. So what Warburg is, I bought him a skin the other night when we played,
And
and I
it's the
think he was
chicken.
thinking it's a chicken. Yeah, it sucks because he doesn't do the chicken dance. Come on, you would
Yeah,
think
it's
that it
not an
would
emote.
default.
You think that'd be an emote?
Yeah. So, but anyway, but I had fun with that. Let's see here, going through some old movies. I watched the old '97 Spawn movie. John Leguizamo as the Violator, the killer clown. He was fucking brilliant in that. But that was probably the only real good thing. That movie does not hold up at all in terms of like CGI, acting, all of it. It's just bad, right? John Leguizamo was the only thing that was great about that movie. And what got me into that was I saw that a couple days ago, Todd McFarlane says the Spawn 2 movie is still progressing. It's been progressing for 25 fucking years. So yeah, I've been doing that. So I went back and watched Spawn, whatever. Interesting soundtrack, but it's kind of fits into the whole 90s uh house music kind of vibe. With like metal artists and like, EDM stuff mixing tracks together. But been doing that. Let's see what else here. Um Went back and watched a few more episodes of Agents of Shield. I miss it, man. I really miss it. It's good stuff. So yeah, that's what I've been up to. Of course, Last of Us. Gonna go catch Creed this weekend. Saw Cocaine Bear last week. I think we recorded before Cocaine Bear, and I'm gonna tell you, Cocaine Bear was a fucking ride. Like, it's not gonna win any awards, but it's a good movie to go watch and hang out. Like, go to a movie theater where you could just kick back and just be stupid. If you can buy a beer and watch it, you're gonna have a blast. Ray Liotta, R.I.P. He was brilliant in it. It's good, man. It's good, and of course, because of that, we get. Have you seen Meth Gator? Have you seen the advertisements for that B
No.
movie? Okay, so you know how there's always B movies, like when Sharknado was big, all these
Oh
other
yeah.
B movies came out. When Transformers was big, there was the Transmorphers. Well, there is a B movie out there advertising on social media. It's called Meth Gator, a gator that eats meth and goes on a killing spree. I don't know, man. I might watch that. It sounds like it's a little stupid, but it sounds like. But so does Cocaine Bear. But I had fun. I had fun, man. I had fun with that. Elizabeth Banks did a good job with that movie, man. So that's what I've been up to. Yep. Last of Us, enjoying that. And Mando, that came out
Heck yeah.
yesterday, man.
So
Yeah,
speaking
that
of
was
those
good.
two, where do you want to
Yeah.
start? Do you want to start Mando or do you want to start with The Last of Us, which would have been the oldest thing to talk
Let's
about?
start with Last of Us because yeah, let's start with Last of Us. There's a few things I want to unpack, but not a whole lot with that
Okay, so
episode.
we're going to start with The Last of
Episode
Us
7.
episode 7, titled Left Behind, which is of course named after the DLC from the first game, also
Yep.
called Left Behind, where it tells the backstory of how Ellie was bitten, her, hopeful relationship with her best friend,
Yep.
oh my god, Riley, played by Storm
Riley.
Reed.
Hmm.
And it kind of tells a few weeks before the setting of where she meets Joel, specifically in the show. I think the timeline's a little different in the game, if I recall, but
I think
not that
so.
different.
Yeah.
Like this is a really faithful, like kind of 1-to-1 of what the DLC was. Um, so, what were your big takeaways from The Last of Us Episode 7?
Well, man, if you play the DLC, you knew the story with Riley and Ellie, but at the same time, this is another instance of you think you're prepared because you've seen it happen in the game, and when it's executed on like live action, I guess you could say, it's a gut punch. It really is because especially with them doing it, with two more episodes to go, really shows kind of like the emotion of things because you're already been beaten down. You've had a few episodes where it's just you knew what was going to take place and it still got to you, and then this was happening. I still got found myself getting a little emotional. The only thing I will say about it though is that I thought the energy was a little off, but I understand it because it's supposed to be an awkwardness between Ellie and Riley, and I get that. Um, but I thought both actresses were great in this episode. I thought they were great. It just uh, it's going to set up a really interesting finale. So obviously next week's episode we're going to talk about what happens with Joel and recovery and all that. But um, if I remember in the game, they're holed up for a few weeks, right?
Yeah, there's
If I
a
remember,
decent time chunk there.
like 2 or 3, like 3 or 4 weeks or something. Like I think longer than that, probably like 5 or 6 weeks. I think they're holed up. Um,
Yeah, because
I
it's
appreciate.
it's winter in the game, and then it's spring when the finale happens, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's yeah, it was a good episode, man. There were a few things here and there, but then I really like how they just cut it off with after they're both bitten because we already know what happened with how Ellie recovers because she's immune, but to know exactly what happened with Riley, I see it
But
as
yet still
I
not quite 100%. Like,
yeah, it technically is a death off camera. Let's be frank, it's a
yeah,
death
and
off
obviously the
camera still.
character is dead. Like we know that, but in terms of is Ellie saying she killed her? Like when she's
Yeah,
like earlier in the show, she shot a guy. She's like, not the first person I've shot.
yep,
I'm like, well, does that mean like once she didn't turn, she had to kill her friend?
yeah,
Like when you really think through how that scenario would have played out, like if they did wait to turn and then Ellie just doesn't turn, right? Like that would be it'd be almost reminiscent of episode 5, right?
yeah.
Where the Sam turns, but in this case, Ellie didn't obviously didn't know she was immune, so she's expecting to die the entire time, and then
Yeah,
has
they're
to
both.
come to
Yeah, yeah,
terms
yeah.
with it.
Yeah, they're both accepting their fate at this point. At the end of this episode, they know they are both gonna die. Yeah,
Yeah, like that is fucked up. Like when you really step back and go, "Oh shit, that's nuts. That's wild." Like just to imagine that emotional ride.
so how do you execute this in your opinion? Do you do another flashback to show what happens, or
I
what
think you
I
leave it
think is gonna happen?
ambiguous.
And well, you can be ambiguous, but I think maybe she tells Joel
Yeah, like do it as
what
like
happened.
she's telling Joel. Like we're not gonna
Yeah,
see it. We're gonna
no,
see the emotional fallout of it with her, like telling Joel. Maybe it doesn't have to. Not for
yeah,
sure that's going to happen. I don't know if they have time. There's only 2 episodes left, but
yeah, yeah.
I thought it was extremely well done. Any other
So
thoughts?
Uh, but it makes the scene, like her reaction to when they buried Sam and Henry, more poignant. You know, like
Hmm.
it's just because she's had, now we both know, like more than likely she had to probably kill Riley. You know, we're just gonna make that assumption, she probably killed
That or
Riley.
she blames herself, one or
She
the
blames
other.
herself, and then she had to bury her. You know, like because Riley is technically a Firefly, so
Oh, and we could get a flashback with a continuing flashback. Maybe it is Marlene that had to kill her,
yeah, it's possible that Marlene shows up
and
at
that's when
the
she
because
realizes that, hey, Ellie was bit but didn't die and didn't turn.
yeah, yeah.
Like, I want to see how that plays out. Like, how did Marlene figure out that Ellie was immune? That'll be an interesting part of the
So
finale,
it's
I'm sure.
possible. It's possible if they're going to make Marlene, like if we're going to get a Marlene flashback, it makes sense to. I mean, it makes sense to have a flashback about what happens in that regard, like the connection between Marlene and Ellie, like that kind of that introduction for those two characters. But outside of that, I really think it'd probably be more effective to just have her tell the story. But then you're like you said, we have to see her and Marlene. So it's possible we get that probably like the dry open to next episode, and then we get kicked back into where we're at now. You know. So.
Possibly, yeah.
But it was a good episode on my side, man. How do you feel about things? How
I
did you
quite
feel this
enjoyed it. I
episode?
don't think anything this season, maybe the finale will, but man, nothing's going to touch episode 3.
Yeah.
But I think this is probably the second or third strongest episode.
Okay.
The premiere was great too.
Yeah.
So I would say it's probably on that level. The set design, I mean, geez, good lord. Absolute 10 out of 10. And it has this
Yeah.
entire show, like building half a town, right? Like the whole with the Jackson set and everything. Just absolutely just going for it, going for broke, nothing held back kind of design with practical effects. Absolutely loved it. Like the mall set, everything set in 2003, like that just worked, man. It was awesome. I like the arcade scenes, especially when they were, figuring out how to play Mortal Kombat. Like that whole sequence of exploring the mall is just incredible. It was one of the best moments of the entire show so far. Um, Bella Ramsey and of course Storm Reed just absolutely killed it. Right, they're both feeling each other out on terms of where they're
Yeah.
at. With
Yeah.
is there a potential there for chemistry? Like they're trying to figure out who they are and who they might mean, what they might mean to each other beyond just
Yeah.
being best friends. I thought they both sold that really, really well. And then the scene where Ellie realizes that, and then Riley tells her, "I'm leaving, and this is our last night." Everything from then on, it's just absolute perfect from there. Some people, I mean, you could argue maybe it was a little long, given where this takes place in the story,
Hmm.
because there's only 2 episodes to go. We know we're gonna have this Troy Baker coming into like with this gang episode in episode 8.
Yep.
Then we have the finale.
Yep.
So you could argue maybe getting Joel closer to recovered would have been better this episode, but that's more of a what if. We'll have to see where they go in episode 8 before we can maybe better judging the pace here.
Okay.
Kind of like, so it's just to kind of like to keep it in a historical perspective. You don't judge one episode on one episode, with rare exception, like episode 3. Um, you got to kind of wait to see where the whole show ends up before you can point to, oh, that was badly paced. So we'll have to see where they go. And I want to, and of course, everybody predicted it. Of course, this one's getting review bombed by fucking assholes who can't stand the fact
Of
that,
course. Of course.
oh, two girls were into each other. Okay, cool. Like, why you guys got to be dicks? Like, just it's people. I don't know. It
But
never makes sense to me.
okay, so here's my. It's not even a soapbox. It's just kind of a mini tangent on it. Like, you know, I- if it makes like the idea, if someone's personal views, it makes the idea of watching, relationships between same sex couples, it makes them feel awkward or uncomfortable. Okay, that's fine, I understand it, but like they really, it's not thrown in your face. Both episodes, both 3 and 7, it's a part of who the characters are, but it's not like you're not being constantly reminded about it, like, or it's not really front and center. And I say that because it's an interesting thing, because this whole thing with Riley and Ellie, because we know the game, we know we the
Yeah,
games, we've played the game, so we know where these characters are. The casual moviegoer, okay, that's watching this for the first time, it can kind of take them a little by surprise. But I'm like, but it's not being thrown in their face constantly,
yeah.
like
Like it's a
where
coming
they're
of it's this episode was basically a
Yeah,
one night coming of age story.
and you're shown in the very beginning of the flashback that they're not really given that kind of life to live because
Yeah.
it's Fedra, right?
Yeah, with
I keep
Fedra, yeah.
forgetting Fedra. Like that whole Fedra life is a very blockaded structural format that they have, kind of like just to beat someone down into becoming a part of their system, like kind of like the Empire, in Star Wars. So I can understand that they don't really have a chance to work through their emotions, right? All of these kids growing up within these quarantine zones, and so she's out there for a night with who she thought was her best friend, and then she realizes because she's forced to really think things through that I have feelings for her, and but it's not pushed into your face so hard. It's just it was a kiss, because they're two young adults, they're discovering their lives, who they are, and
Yeah.
I appreciate how they artistically they did this one very well, and episode 3 how it was done artistically was very well because obviously how it was addressed was Bill has been living in the closet his whole life,
Yeah,
right?
and that one was
Yeah,
told more as a love story.
yeah, well, it was, but like I'm talking about the reveal that Bill is
Yeah.
gay. Like it was just like okay,
Another thing
but
that was that's in the game
yeah,
if you did all the
exactly.
side content.
If you noticed, if you did everything in the world, you would have noticed that. I remember like people were like, Bill wasn't gay in the games, and people were like zooming in on like the men's magazines on the table, and like
Yeah,
he was gay, guys. It just wasn't a big deal, and but like how the way they did it artistically, like the discovery of him and Frank kind of helping him come out and all that stuff because he could see it in him, and Bill being really and Offerman was just fantastic in that scene, like just coming like you could just see like he did a great job of like this release of like and then fear because he didn't know what to do next. But it was done artistically in episode 3, and it was done artistically here. Yeah, I don't have a problem with it, man. And I understand people might not like it, but that's fine. But to go out there and review bomb it when it still was overall a good episode, that's just clownish. It's clownish.
yeah.
People need to find better hobbies and better use of their time than to, because yeah, I don't want to go too much on a rant on these type of like social topics. I just think it's real silly, man. It really
One
is to
last note: if you're
to
gonna
bomb
review
on that.
bomb, just don't watch.
Yeah, that's it, man.
There's
Just
so
don't.
much content, like we talked earlier in this
Yeah,
episode. There's so much stuff coming out. If you
yeah.
can't find something to watch, that is a deficit on you.
Yeah, exactly. Like we just talked about like Severance out there. Lasso is a fantastic show for everybody,
Yeah, like go binge that and
it's
get ready for season 3.
yeah. So like there's so many things out there that can fit into everyone's wheelhouse. And honestly, if you don't like it, you could just shut it off and go watch something else because there's some other award-winning film or TV show out there for you. Like there's just so much Ozarks. Like, hey, that was a fantastic show
Yeah,
that recently wrapped up. Like that one was one of those things where, oh, that's in my wheelhouse. Great, man. Like there's so much stuff out there. Stop focusing on reasons to be hateful.
that's
It's
very
just
true. Just don't
yeah,
hate.
yeah. Just
Life's
don't
a lot
hate.
better when you don't hate.
Yeah,
It's a little more
yeah.
fulfilling.
That hate ages you, man. That does age you quite a bit. Wears you down.
Hmm.
I can really honestly say that. Yeah, but fantastic episode. Another good one, man. This is really turning out to be. It's not like super action packed, over the top zombie type of show,
And the game
but
wasn't really either, except for like because it's a gameplay. Like they need to have that for the gameplay mechanic. But
yeah,
like within the cutscenes and everything, like it's
yeah.
that's not what the story's about.
Not a lot of jump scares in the in the in the
It's
on the
about
cutscenes.
the people, the relationships to one another, and often it's just a two-person like thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I thought they've
So let's
done the themes of it. They've adapted it
yeah.
damn near perfectly.
Let's be fair though. When we both played the first time you played The Last of Us, you realize you're in it for the cutscenes, less about the actual gameplay,
Yeah, that's the
because
reason
it's
I
such
couldn't finish the games because the gameplay just. I haven't played the remaster.
yeah,
The gameplay just I bounced off like hard.
yeah.
So
And it's not an easy game, guys. I'm gonna be honest with you. If you're not like great with like technical controller moves, it can get frustrating for you at times. Trust me. But then again, it's such an incredible story within the cutscenes that's what keeps you into it.
very true.
Oh man,
Very true.
good episode. Can't wait to see where we go as we get to the finale. And we both know that more than likely, if it's been as close to 1-to-1 as the first game, yeah, we're in for a lot in the finale. A hell of a lot in the finale.
Very true. And of course, like I said, Troy Baker's next week. He was the game's
Yep.
Joel, so he's going to
Yep.
play a side character in one of the gangs, more of an antagonistic character. Very, very excited to see that. And then Abby Johnson, I believe, is coming in the finale to play a
Ashley,
flashback version of Ellie's mom.
Ashley Johnson, right?
Ashley Johnson. I said the wrong name.
Yes.
Abby's the name of the antagonist in the second game. I
Yep.
fucked that up. My bad. It is Ashley Johnson. But yeah, so that'll be a very fun couple of weeks. And right now it's peak Pedro time, man.
Oh yeah.
Hosting
Come on.
SNL. He's got The Last of Us, and of course, the premiere of The Mandalorian season 3 dropped last night. We're gonna move on to that here at this time. So Fusion, big picture takeaways. What'd you think of Mando season 3, The Apostate?
Great first two scenes of this episode.
That
I
opening scene was
loved it.
dope.
The opening scene. Are you talking about the actual opening scene, the original opening, or the ceremonial opening scene? Because technically, it felt like there were two opening scenes to this episode.
I would say the stuff with the Mandalorian like ceremony.
Yeah. Okay. That was fantastic. I thought that was awesome. We could. I don't want to spoil too much, but like I'll just say that scene, because I've seen a ton of people post like clips of that on social media. That was incredible. Great to have Pascal back as Mando. Carl Weathers, man, interesting cat, man. I'm not gonna lie, but High Magistrate. I'm gonna get it right because I don't want him to get mad at me. High Magistrate Grief Karga. Good to see him. Hey, we get a backstory of what's going on with Cara Dune. That way we don't have to question that anymore.
She was
I'm
recruited by
really
special forces, and I wish they'd
yeah,
said, "Oh, and she also died." But moving on, like it was like
no,
if you're gonna go that, if you're gonna say just move her off screen, just say she died.
yeah.
That said, though, I
They're
am
keeping it in their
wondering
back pocket.
at this point, like we've gotten to a point with the CGI technology that like nobody recasts anymore, and I hate that. Like, just recast the character. It's not exactly like she was, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. You can recast that character.
Yeah.
Fucking Game of Thrones is doing that shit all the time. It's fine. Audiences don't give a shit as long as the portrayal is just as good as what came before, if not better. Nobody's gonna care.
And let's be frank, Gina Carano isn't exactly blowing people
That's
away.
what I mean. Like, she's not
Like,
a defining person in this role.
he
Right?
was really fucking good in Haywire, but there's a lot to that. Like I think Soderbergh really
The
really
backstory about how everything needed to be
yeah.
ADR'd and like she couldn't
Yep.
hit cues and stuff.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of wild that they even made a movie at all.
They basically edited the shit out of that movie to make her look good, and they did a good job because she wasn't bad. But I'm sure there was not just the ADR, the voice work, but I'm sure there was a ton more that we don't know about too.
Very,
But,
very true.
because that was her first real acting gig too, and then it was in a lead role.
Yeah,
if I
because it was
remember
right after
correctly.
her MMA career.
Yeah, she had just really dropped out of that. But anyway, but back to Mando. It was great to see all the main like not all the heavy hitters. We're gonna get a few more of them here very soon. Babu Frick is a Anzalon.
You got me there, man.
Okay, yeah, I'm just looking it up right now. Babu Frick is an Anzalon, which are the little tinkerers. We get a few more of those guys to see those because everybody liked Babu Frick from
He was the one
Rise of
standout
Skywalker.
character of The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah. Now Kerry Russell's character wasn't too bad. Wasn't too bad.
Which again, what the fuck were they doing with that character? Like,
I know.
there was so much about that movie that's just like,
yeah.
Did you think it through? Like, think through the implications of these characters and their place in the lore and their backstories and the timeline. Just think it through. And clearly they did not.
Yeah.
It was absolutely wild. But moving on back to Mando season 3.
Had fun with it. I'm really excited where we're going because obviously we're going to Mandalore. He's gonna go into the waters, into
The living waters
the caves,
in the mines of Mandalore.
Yes, to get himself what's the word?
Purified.
Because
I want to drop the prince purified in the waters of Lake Minnetonka.
Oh yes, nice.
It's like that, but Star Wars.
Because he is an apostate currently, and he wants that rectified. But I look, man, it's lining up to be a fun season, and obviously we're going to get a lot of the other characters from previous seasons, as well as we're going to get Boba Fett here at some point. So obviously there is going to be a big battle with involving the Mandalorians, all of them Mandalorians. So yeah, I had fun with it, man. It's funny because I've heard people complain about the Mandalorian being, oh, he's just doing missions nonstop. I'm like, did you not know he was a fucking bounty hunter before the show started? That was his job, and he's doing jobs for people. So yeah, it makes sense for him to be traveling around a lot. But this is a little different. He's on a personal mission, which I like. Yeah.
True. A lot
How
of
about
fun
you, Dan?
Easter eggs
What'd
in
you
this
go?
episode. Seeing the
Yeah.
Purgil, which were a
Yeah.
major plot point of a couple different episodes of Star Wars Rebels,
Yep.
which hints towards some greater connections towards that show here in this season. Of course, we're going to see Ahsoka to help set up her own show again. Probably see
Yes.
Sabine Wren. Probably get some of the backstory about their mission, right? Because maybe she helps Mando in an episode, and he asks her for more help, and she's like, "No, I got to go find Ezra." And then we get a little backstory to connect the tissue there to Rebels. The Purgil are a species that like live and can go through hyperspace, basically.
Yeah.
And they like feed on this like gas, and it's a great couple episodes of Rebels because one's season 2, and then they're in the finale because Ezra's on a ship with Thrawn, and he calls Purgil to him with the Force, and they take the ship they're on and fuck off to hyperspace, and nobody knows where they went. That's why they're probably going to be tracking some Purgil down.
Yeah.
So that's going to be an interesting. Where do they go with there to set up the Ahsoka show?
Sure.
Bo-Katan coming in.
Yep,
So
Bo-Katan.
how are we gonna connect with her in the main story? Because we know from previews we're gonna see her ship again. She's
Mhm.
got that like Deathwing style ship that was in Rebels as well. Darth Maul had a ship like that, and most of Death Watch have a ship like that, in which Bo-Katan was a part of Death Watch. So that'll be interesting to see how she gets weaved back in, because you don't just have Sackhoff come in for one episode where she's sitting on a throne like a boss. She'll be back in some fashion. So I'm just curious how her faction's going to play into the quest on Mandalore, because like, are they liberating Mandalore, or is Mando going to find out? Oh, it wasn't like poisoned or anything. It's where like an Imperial holdout is or something. Like, because clearly there's going to need to be
yeah.
a conflict, and if
Yeah.
it's just he can't just go to the waters, like and like work through glass that was like to get there. Like, there's going to be something there to fight.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if it's going to be an Imperial holdover. So, because again,
And
with Baby Yoda and the Empire needing his blood and all that, like maybe that comes back.
also, there's a potentially what's happening on Mandalore could be tied into whatever Ahsoka's currently doing in her search for Thrawn.
True.
Because I mean, obviously, because of the very first trailer that popped off, the full trailer for this season, you saw some like all out like battles taking place, and so it leads me to believe there's going to be a big conflict on Mandalore. So yeah, maybe like you said, maybe Thrawn was stationed there, or someone or something that ties Thrawn, to
Plus,
Mandalore.
Sabine is Mandalorian. I forgot about that.
Yeah, it's true.
So
It's true.
maybe she comes in and like Ahsoka comes to recruit her.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting way to go. I didn't think about that.
And we also have the dark saber. It was brought up again by Bo-Katan, and I know Mando has it. Obviously, it's going to play a big role. It
Mhm.
has to. So yeah, we'll see where things go, man. But I'm really excited for it. I really am.
I think that at the
We've
final episode, I don't know if they've released the titles. Have they? And I was just thinking what they should call it if what
I
happens
don't.
happens.
I have not seen all of the titles from.
Mandalorian season 3 episode titles. Have they given the name? So the first one was The Apostate.
Yes.
Then nope, it just listed as chapters. So if what happens is he essentially unites all of Mandalore, absolutely you need to call the finale The Mandalore.
Have you seen the writing breakdown? Favreau and Filoni are all over this season.
Well,
All
they
over
kind
it.
of have to be, because again, to come back to it, I haven't said this part yet. The premiere was a great resetting of the board,
Yeah.
because, and this behind the scenes, I don't know where this decision was made, but obviously they decided, okay, Grogu can't be separated, despite the fact that that was a major emotional beat of the season 2 finale. I wonder if the decision to have this happen in Book of Boba Fett was an attempt to have some synergy, or was it more they were desperate for viewership for Boba Fett because they knew it was going to fail? Like, when does that? I want to know that. I would love to know the production background timeline of they're working in Boba Fett. when did they decide we're going to slot in basically a full episode of The Mandalorian?
Yeah.
Like when does that occur? Like, did that happen because they were seeing the scripts and the early production of Boba Fett and they knew that's not great. We need something here. And they went to Filoni and Favreau and said, hey, what were you going to do? Let's just put it here. Because I guarantee you the plan was to have Mando in some fashion in Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it was the plan to have that all happen that way.
Yeah.
It might have been. Because like doing crossover, major storyline crossover stuff's not unheard of. But to have the entire episode be Mandalorian is...
Yeah, well, he became the lead when he showed back up. That was the thing.
Yeah,
He
like
became
they
the lead and
completely refocused
and
the
Boba
last
became
2.5
secondary.
episodes there. It was
Yeah.
like, okay, this is wild. So I want to lean towards more, it was a desperation move than it was always the plan kind of move. Because if it wasn't always the plan kind of move, that's stupid.
Yeah.
And Filoni and Favreau haven't stricken me as that kind of like shotgun style with what they want to do with Star Wars. Right?
But
Like,
wasn't Robert
it was
Rodriguez one of the primary?
he was the
primaries on
primary driver of most of
on-
where they were going tone-wise, story-wise.
Yeah.
And I just don't know if his style really fits in Star Wars outside of him working on someone else's show, like because he did the episode where Fett came back.
Yeah.
But that was Favreau and Filoni's show, and Rodriguez just directed it.
Yeah.
That worked. I think, again, not to retread that ground, but I wonder if they were trying to cover up that misstep. Which then, domino effect, you got to reset the board for Mando Season 3. Because all this happened in a different show. And it was really effective. Like, that was a phenomenal episode.
Yeah.
In Book of Boba Fett, where, he's fighting the Darksaber, and it's fighting him, and he revealed he took his helmet off, and he's got to go get Grogu, when we see Ahsoka talking with Luke. Like, so many awesome moments happened. Was that 1 or 2 episodes? It's been so long.
I think it was 2 episodes.
Might have been 2, right? Yeah, I think it was 2. So, like, that was just really, really good storytelling, but it was in a different show. So, I wonder... that they kind of backed themselves into a corner. And I'm not really sure which way I would have played it. So, because you don't know why or when decisions were made, but I thought they did a decent enough job at resetting that board and telling you what happened-ish to get you back to the Season 3 pilot, and Grogu's back.
Yeah.
Because we get the reset where he goes to the Mandalorians and they tell him you have to go to the waters of Lake Minnetonka and get purified. I'm going to come back to that all the time. In the episode, I was like, I keep seeing the clip of Prince talking to that girl. It was like, have you been purified in the waters of Lake Minnetonka? I'm going to clip that out. I'm going to probably send it to Noobs.
When you say that, I don't think about that clip. I think about the Chappelle Show clip with the Prince story, the Charlie Murphy True Hollywood story where they're playing the basketball game and he says it. So, but like the way Chappelle does it's just fucking
it's so good.
But like it just that's just such a great line.
Michigan's going to win in overtime. Damn it. Sorry. Yeah. Sports talk. I know.
So you're right. I don't know where that was, but they did a good job resetting the table. Obviously, we're going to get Boba Fett for a couple episodes during this season, but he obviously is going to be taking, still a secondary character. But I'm curious why Mando has to go back to Tatooine and Mos Espa. Like, what is there for him? Like, what is there other than
I think recruiting allies. I think he's going to go to Mandalore, see what's there, and go get allies.
Okay.
That's what's happening.
And then he obviously has to go back to Bo-Katan and
rally her fleet.
Rally her because she's in a bit of a funk at the end of this first episode. So obviously he needs her fleet. Okay. That makes sense. And then that makes sense. Unfortunately, we won't get Cara Dune and the special because she's off in special forces, but Grief Karga does play a role in this, obviously. As chief magistrate, he can really
getting to see how Navarro has progressed is really cool.
Yeah,
that's really cool world building. I love that.
But it makes you wonder how long is the time from the first season to this one? Is it several years?
I think
Because
so.
I was reading something the other day where the theory was, or even maybe Favreau kind of hinted that Luke has Grogu for over a year at some
Yeah, it's been a
plus.
long time.
Okay, okay. And then someone said no, and then of course I think like one of the Disney execs said no, it hasn't been years that since Luke took Grogu, but initially Favreau stated it was a 2 year window, and or they kind of iterated it was a 2 year window where they kind of backtracked on that because fans didn't like that idea of like Jaren was going around for 2 years really doing a
Yeah,
whole lot of
Favreau
random.
revealed roughly 2 years have passed in the
Okay,
universe.
okay, okay,
So
okay,
Favreau did say that just to confirm.
okay. And we also haven't really confirmed Grogu's age. He's not exactly like he's an infant in his species, but he is like in his 60s, I think. Someone said
It was like
something like
late 50s,
50s or 60s.
but
Yeah,
in terms
okay.
of a species that lives in the 900s,
Yeah.
right? Like that's keep that part in perspective.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Well, it's interesting trying to put all the timelines together now.
yeah,
But it's fun, man, because
I'm
this is
still thinking like, man, if you guys knew you were gonna make awesome shit like Andor, God, I wish you hadn't pigeonholed yourself with the sequel trilogy.
nah,
You know,
man.
like they backed themselves into such a corner because it cut off all possibility of that 30-year window because we know where it
Yeah.
ends up.
Yeah.
And God, shit like so good. So that's another
Um,
question I wanted to bounce off you.
sure.
Since obviously we both love the hell out of Andor,
Yep.
I think it's fair to say it's the best Star Wars since OT and Rogue One,
Rogue One. Yeah. Rogue One
right?
was a
Because it's
very
very akin
I
to it. It's literally the sequel to Andor. Like
yeah.
it's a
But
direct part of it.
Rogue One is a very good movie. I think it's a very
Yeah,
good
there's a lot
movie.
of that DNA
Yeah.
in Andor. So comparatively, and obviously they're telling different kind of stories, right? Like
Sure.
Mandalorian is a more traditional Western, different town each week kind of story.
Uh-huh.
Does the presence of an Andor in the universe, like a show that good, lessen what Mandalorian is?
Not for me because we talk about the repercussions of like government and politics with Andor. It's a much more political
Yeah, it's a
spy
different lens of the
thriller.
universe for sure.
It's a spy thriller where Mandalorian is the old west version of that galaxy. Like you get kind of the with when I think I said this a while back when we were talking about Andor when we were wrapping up that season that we've gotten so used to Jedi, Sith, Skywalkers really dominating our Star Wars saga where it was refreshing to hear about everyone else's lives in that galaxy far, far away, right? In Andor. This is a little different because yeah, they're intertwined into the world of the Mandalorian, but the reality is that there's also like we knew about this. There was kind of a almost a Wild West mindset with all of the bounty hunters that roamed around the galaxy. The books over the years really compounded those kind of stories. They really jumped into those stories. So it was great to really get that and put it on camera. And so I don't think I think they both can exist because they are tonally they're very different for me.
True. I think there's a place for both for sure.
Now, Book of Boba Fett, on the other hand, is just it's a
Well, there's
limbo
not room
show.
for garbage.
Yeah, it's just when you go back and watch it, it's like this show is one of those limbo shows. It kind of fits in the style of the trilogy, the sequel trilogy, in that I don't. It really felt like they didn't really know what to do with it. Like
Yeah, it was
Kathleen
like
Kennedy
it's
with the
not a terrible concept, but
no,
what were you gonna do with it?
like they reintroduced Boba Fett in Mando, and everyone's like,
And
hell
it was
yeah, we're finally.
incredible.
It
Like
was like
when he
great,
drops it in the armor,
yeah,
like like the Doom. Like remember the when the Doom music kicks in memes.
yeah,
That was the most fitting use of that meme I've ever seen. Like it was
yeah,
on goddamn point. Almost like they made it with that in mind. Like
yeah.
it was awesome. Boba Fett comes in, just wrecks shop, both in and out of the armor. It was utterly incredible. The hype was just through the
Yeah,
roof for a Boba Fett show.
yeah.
And I still think the decision to paint the armor was what was the real going off the rails moment.
Okay.
I think is that he had that iconic, lived in, busted up look, but still a
Yeah,
badass. Still
yeah,
the best is at what he does. basically Star Wars Wolverine,
Hmm.
and the decision to like give it a new coat of paint and like add just no,
Yeah,
that was a misstep. That was the first misstep on the road to what are we doing with Boba Fett?
yeah. But hopefully they, apparently they want to do a season two. We find another director, or maybe Filoni and Favreau decide to step
Or
in.
listen to the actor
Yeah,
because he was trying
true.
to apparently behind the scenes he was trying to save the show, like
Yeah, that's
rewriting
yeah,
scripts, doing takes his own way whenever Rodriguez wasn't on the shot, and just like he was kind of, in fairness to the would have been second unit director probably,
yeah,
he was probably an asshole and just overriding all the decisions. I don't know if that would have been a great working environment, but he gave a shit. Like I'll give him that. He was really felt like the character was not being properly served. So maybe a second season could redeem it. Who knows though? It just felt like they didn't know if they wanted to make a Boba Fett show or a Tales of the Bounty Hunter show. Like that's what it felt like. Because Tales of the
yeah,
Bounty Hunter was a great EU novel. Or was
yeah.
it a
It was.
series? I think it might
It's
have
a
been just a one
series.
book, or was it like a,
No, I
a
think
book, a self-contained series?
it was a series, self-contained series. Yes, that's
Yeah,
what it
like
was.
that was a great series. And a Tales of the Bounty Hunter show clearly will work because Mando works.
Yep.
But that's almost too close to Mando to work. You know what I mean? Like, why tell two stories like that in the universe at the same time? Unless you're going to go harder on the. No, Boba's an anti hero. Like, he's not trying to be a hero. He is an anti hero. You fuck around, you will find out. Like, lean into that. Have him be the dark, Mando, Din
Mhm.
Djarin. Have him be the dark version of him, and it would have worked. Instead, they just tried to make him Din,
Yep.
which doesn't work because that already exists. But that's beside the point. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole again. We've talked Boba Fett to death on this podcast.
Yeah, we have. We have.
Back to season 3 of Mandalorian. Pedro Pascal continues to be awesome. And
Yes,
like
he
I said
does.
about in the intro, talk about a week, man. Like a couple of weeks really, because he had the SNL. Last of Us is continuing to just set the world on fire. Viewership through the roof. And then Mandalorian's back. That is an absolutely epic month for an actor to be having. That's fantastic. The guy's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's freaking awesome to see because
He's
he's
he's he's
incredible.
memes. He's become memes. He's just yeah. He's everything right now. And I'll be
It's
honest,
also
if
a
you look,
meme that meme where he's like high and Nick Cage looks over at him in Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. To go
yeah,
back to the sports thing, it's taken over college basketball Reddit because it's like all the fans that get mad and look over and see the other team just fucking around, and it's Pedro Pascal just like giving that stupid goofy face. God, that movie's so good. I
he
love that
was really
movie.
he was really he was really done a disservice as Maxwell Lord.
That whole movie was like much like Boba Fett.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah,
not the worst idea to tell a Wonder Woman story like that in that setting, but why'd you do it? Why'd you break your own lore to do that?
yeah.
So bizarre.
Oh man, if you really want to get some more Pedro Pascal, I highly recommend going and watching the first couple of seasons of Narcos on Netflix.
Figured you'd go there.
He's fucking fantastic. Like just the entire cast is in the story is of course based on a true story, obviously of Pablo Escobar, but like it's such a good show. The first two seasons, and he is phenomenal on that show. Of course, Game of Thrones. Yes, I know that, but like if you're looking for something a little outside of that, something a little different, and you haven't ever watched Narcos, man, the first three seasons are really good, but like in the first two, he is just like nails on those first two seasons of Narcos. So, but yeah, man, great actor, man. Like we definitely need more of him. If let me ask you this, where would you put him in the MCU?
Are there
Ah,
any major Latino characters we haven't seen?
uh, Sunspot from X Force is, but then we've seen him in New Mutants, so that's been redone. Um, that's an interesting question, man. Just because there aren't too many out there. He could be an aged Thunderbird, and play a native, but he's Chilean. Is he Chilean? I can't remember. Is he,
I
is he
think
Chilean?
so. That sounds right.
Okay. Okay.
He's South American,
South America, but um,
like the
it,
umbrella, or.
I was just thinking because, like,
Right.
Diego Luna. Obviously, we know if he ever goes back into the MCU, he's going to be Ghost Rider.
Fucking hell yeah, he deserves it. got
canceled
shafted out of
show.
that. That was terrible.
God. But where would where because I think Pedro Pascal could be a great he could be a good character actor like on the serious side for the MCU as a villain because we've seen so much of him as in more of a in more of like this interesting like people are calling Last of Us Mandalorian with zombies whatever. I don't see it. I think people just see the same character the
I
actor and they
kind of got one.
okay
Now I'm wondering, it might just be his voice.
okay
If you want to go villain route, because the guy's got a fabulous flair.
okay.
What about Mr. Sinister?
I like that. I like
Right?
that.
He's got a flair for, the dramatic, like, there's that whole Sinister comic where he's like got an island of himself, like
Yes.
infinite,
Oh
like a ton of
God.
versions of himself.
Yep.
Like, that kind of feels like a role he could play. Or if they want to go more serious, an MCU version of Trask,
Okay.
the inventor of the
Yeah.
Sentinels and
The
everything.
Sentinels. Yeah. Oliver Trask.
Yeah, like that fits. So, but man, I actually kind of would like to see him now voicing a ton of different versions of Mr. Sinister.
That would be awesome. That really would like because with Maxwell Lord, the maniacal part of that character later in the film, he was really good
Yeah,
at
he was the
that.
best part of that movie by far.
So I really think that he could be a great Sinister, where he has different personalities based on all the characters, And I think it would be a good way to spin it. You do have an almost a Sinister Island like early on within like or a world where Mister Sinister started his genetics by testing himself,
Yeah,
and you find out he has a lab of all these Nathaniel Essexes running around, different personalities.
yeah,
So
I could vibe
that
with
would
that.
actually I like that, man. I like that idea, him being Mr. Sinister. I like that.
Yep.
Yeah. Good call. But man, like, yeah, we're getting a lot of Pedro Pascal right now, and I don't see a need for us to not have any more of him. We're gonna get season two. We probably won't get season two next year of Last of Us. We'll probably be
Yeah, I imagine they're gonna.
24,
That's
25.
gonna be the alternate of House of Dragon.
Yeah,
Well, the
makes
House of the
sense.
Dragon next year. The year after will be The Last of Us.
It's crazy to think that now we're on a model where we no longer get next year seasons in
Well, that's
America.
where maybe we want to end on this. A note you
Okay.
dropped last week about the impending writer's strike.
Yep.
It's not a given it's going to happen, right? They may still work out deals. Do you want to run through that, like, specifically with that article? It's been a few days since I
I
read it. I don't want to misquote things.
I didn't. I don't. Let me. I can pull it up real quick. But basically, um, it's just key demands they're looking at, and I can pull that up here if you just give me a sec.
It's not
But
impossible they, work through a deal and there is
yeah,
no work stoppages on anything, because
yeah,
everyone remembers the strike of 2007. Like, that
yep.
ground Hollywood to a halt. Shows were canceled and never came back.
I
Some
think
never recovered.
I think the media's put a little bit of like a sensational spin on this, but according to what a lot of people think, that there's constant negotiations going back and forth rather than what happened in
Yeah,
2017.
that one
Like
was there was a total breakdown.
yeah, there was an
Nobody, and
impasse
neither
there.
side flinched.
No, I think this is a little different in that because we're in such a different world now than what we were in '07, where we still relied on network television and cable television to be the primary driver of shows, versus now there are so many different avenues. And so like the way and like we've talked about this many times ad nauseum, there's just so much content in this new age of like of shows and productions because and there's so much high quality content. It's not just like where network TV you only get so many things within each year, like of quality shows across the entire spectrum of network and cable TV, where it's a lot of it is just filler TV. That's quite frankly, executives were like, "Hey, we need cheaper costing shows. Let's just get some decent filler to go with our top level shows," right? Whereas now it's like, nope, people are willing to pay enough for us to fund these things on these streaming services. Let's put out top level,
Well, we think
a
they make enough
yeah,
money for that.
yeah, we think, but
Executives think that.
but I don't I can't pull up. I did have one with all of the major talking points, and forgive me for not having being able to find that. But it just what it sounds like is that May 1st is the deadline, but they really feel like that they're not reaching an impasse at this point. So it's possible that they iron this out here
I do
probably in
wonder though
April.
when the reckoning's gonna come for, like, residuals for
Yeah.
streaming. Like, that is a conversation. Those contracts still have not evolved to the point to fully take into account
Yeah.
the longevity of streaming services, like a syndication type model for streaming. From what I've heard from people in the industry, that still doesn't quite exist. Some actors, and like some people have gotten that into their contracts, but it's not a industry standard union side thing right now.
Yep. Yep.
And of the unions that are gonna and have been willing to just go, you know what, fuck it, we don't need to keep we're ready to strike. The writers have done it. So I'm curious, and maybe now that on the streaming side they know this, maybe they're willing to play ball a little more than they were in 2007 on the, like executive side. Plus, I do wonder if Marvel was using the fatigue as an excuse to lengthen out their timeline of when things are coming out.
Yeah, because they're starting to stretch a few things. Loki's been
Things got
pushed
pushed
back.
to the summer and the
Yeah.
fall, right?
Yep.
Like they're spacing out their timeline. So were they just hedging their bets? Was it just the fatigue? Was it both? That's, I think, the more likely option.
Yeah, both. Yeah.
It's a useful cover, but also kind of necessary because there really is some Marvel fatigue going on. And I think they know that. So, and it's also the fact that they're like, ooh, but what if this strike does happen? Because I believe the thing was, if it's in production, you can continue, but you can't do script
Yes.
changes.
That's
Period.
correct. Yep.
You have to shoot what's on the page.
Yep.
So I don't think anyone wants to get to that stage. So I imagine they're going to fully negotiate before that happens. But that'll be an interesting thing to watch as we get closer to the spring. What all comes of that? Because I believe it was last year or 2 years ago that they had the IATW, the back end, like a prop people and stuff.
I think it was 2
They had
years ago.
they had an impending strike that got negotiated, I think, right?
Yeah. I think it was 21.
Yeah, it was 2 years ago. So like that was averted. So I'm imagining the writers one will be too, but it's something to keep an eye on.
Well, there's a lot to, because it's the union contract, the writers union expires in May, and then they have set a deadline for this negotiation in, like, to actually, if it's not resolved by May, then they're gonna be set for a shutdown in June. But like you said, we have a lot to talk about here just because we're in a very different world with, we've talked about it a few times now. AI with actors, their property rights. What's that going to mean for studios and what they send down the pipeline in terms of money? The other thing is that you mentioned this briefly, but just like films, it's a lot, and it ties into like Scarlett Johansson's lawsuit against Disney for Black Widow. The model has changed significantly with movies and major production, high production TV shows being on these services, because a lot of the big name actors, when a show hits, they would then when it was time to renegotiate, they would get points on the back end. And that's like what we talked about, like the Big Bang Theory, how all of those, the main cast made a fortune the last 3 or 4 years, 4 or 5 years actually, off of that show, was because of the fact that it had exploded up into year 5. It was blowing up, and the contracts, they got points rather than huge salaries, right? You can't do the point system with these streaming services where this content, that's where it primarily lives. But at the same time, most of the streaming platforms are primarily owned by companies that own network television and cable television.
Yeah, at this point, a lot of the legacy people are in the game now.
Yeah. I mean, Netflix is really the only one out there that doesn't
And
have
Amazon.
their own. Oh, and
But now they own MGM, so they got the legacy,
Yep,
a lot of
yep.
the legacy
Yep.
system now.
And Netflix owns their own studios, so it's going to be interesting the next decade, roughly, like the next 6, 7, 8 years, how a lot of this model is going to be built out. And then, like we've talked about, how with these these IP providers kind of pulling content off because they don't want to have server loads, and traffic. They want to reduce tension to having so much IP available currently.
I think the server space thing is complete bullshit. It's the
You think
residuals
so?
part. It's the
I agree.
I want a tax break part, not we need to save space. Who gives a shit about server space? Like that's not a
you're
problem.
right. Because when you talk about residuals, a lot of let's just, as an example, MGM, a lot of that stuff isn't broadcast like and readily available. It's like on AMC, things like old movie networks, like that have very low viewership. So the residuals there aren't very high. Versus you put it under Amazon, and those numbers may go up, so they have to pay a lot more. We don't know and that's the other thing, is that not on top of just points, the residual model is a big thing that they're going to have to look at as well, because they own they put a lot of their old content on these networks.
Yeah,
as
that's
well.
a fascinating part of the conversation.
It's going to be interesting the next few years where they go, and this is a big start of it because we're talking about the Writers Guild Association, the WGA, and the Actors Guild, the SAG, is very different because the writers have they have a bigger stroke in Hollywood in terms of like something like this
Yeah,
than the
because
actors do.
you're on a production and you don't have
Yep,
writers, you fucked.
exactly,
Like you can't. You need to
exactly.
make any changes. You can't do that like by rule,
Yeah,
like industry rules.
there's specific criteria that they have to follow through on rewrites for every script on a production because it has to go through this whole process if it's an officially sanctioned production.
Because if it's and then there's different things if it's not a union shoot,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, and many actors won't do non-union shoots, right?
It's
Like,
funny, man. Yeah, because I think about that movie Rust, the movie with the death on set that Alec Baldwin's a
yeah,
part of. There's a major problem with that production, and when we're talking about these unions, that was a film, an independent quote unquote film that they really wanted to circumvent all of the union stuff, and look what happened. So that's probably something that Hollywood now execs can use as leverage.
yeah,
Oh
that'll
man,
be.
it's going to be a tough negotiation, but the fact that they're still talking, like
Oh
you look
yeah,
through and they're still
they
talking.
don't want to slow down the gravy train of the streaming stuff, so
No,
like nobody wants to hit those brakes. So, but speaking of hitting brakes, do we want to touch on what's going on with Major League Baseball and streaming
we
networks?
can.
Because it's tangentially related with the streaming stuff.
Are we talking about the Warner
The
Discovery stuff?
and the potential bankruptcy of Bailey Sports, their
Oh
RSN,
yeah, oh yeah.
which is owned by the Sinclair Group, who took on a fuckload of debt.
Yep,
So, and I this is for anyone who's a nerd and who's like doesn't watch sports. So back in the day, one of the very first sports streaming services was MLB TV. They pioneered
yep,
the game, dude. Like
yep.
what all the like the NBA, Red Zone, like uh, Sunday Ticket, right? Like all that stuff pioneered by Major League Baseball.
Yep.
Like they made internet sports packages. But what they didn't account for was that their legacy model of TV completely neutered all their efforts. They couldn't
Yeah.
do the thing. They invented the technology, they invented the efficiency, and then couldn't do anything with it because the
Yeah.
regional sports networks
Yep.
meant you had exclusive rights by contract. So MLB
Mhm.
could not broadcast the game themselves.
Yep.
MLB surrendered the rights to their own exclusive. Like NFL owns the rights to the actual streaming. That's why they can do Sunday Ticket, they can do Red Zone, and still have OTA broadcasts.
Mhm.
Right? Major League Baseball can't do that yet. So over the course of like a month, all of a sudden that looks very different. So to give
Mhm.
you a brief rundown where we were last year, I live in Iowa. There's Minnesota, Milwaukee, the two Chicago teams, St. Louis, and Kansas City. So 6 teams within 2 to 6 hours. And by OTA, that means I'm in 6 broadcast networks.
Mhm.
Can't watch a single one because the entire state of Iowa is blacked out because they're all different networks and they all black each other out. So I could not watch the Minnesota Twins, which is my team. I couldn't watch their games unless the only games I could watch were the ones that streamed on Apple TV. That was it. Because Hulu doesn't have a contract with them. I don't think did YouTube TV have a contract with them?
With MLB, yeah, they do.
No,
They do.
with Bailey.
Oh, with Bailey, no,
Because they
not
didn't
with
have a
Bailey.
contract with Bailey Sports.
No, no.
You couldn't watch it on streaming services. So unless you paid the cable subscription that carried Bailey, you couldn't watch them. And I couldn't watch any of them. It's bonkers. I think Chicago's different because they have the WGN legacy OTA deal. Them and the Braves, I think, are different like that, where they don't have a pure cable RSN. They have a general OTA kind of deal.
Yeah.
But so I couldn't watch any of those 6. And some of them are pretty good teams. So it started to like neuter the fan base because like you can't expand your fan base if people can't watch pretty standard stuff. But now that Bailey Sports Network, because they're owned by a company that has a ton of debt, just missed a major debt servicing payment. Like that is generally seen as a precursor to bankruptcy.
Mhm.
So you get Rob Manfred
Rob Manfred,
is like
yes.
licking his chops because he's like, oh, we might be getting to rip these contracts the fuck up. And then Warner Brothers says they're going to dissolve they have 6 RSNs, four
Four.
RSNs in major markets.
Yep.
So they are going to get out of the game altogether too.
And just to be clear, one of those markets is a top 5 market in Houston that houses the World Series champion
Yeah,
Houston
with
Astros. I mean,
major baseball following.
yes, with a huge, and I know a lot of people hate the Astros for whatever reason, but they have a huge nation, like that, especially in Latin communities,
They're
they have a huge
for
following.
college basketball fans too. They're like the Duke of baseball
Yeah,
right now. Like they're
at
the
this
villain,
point, yeah, they're
but
closer
the
to the
villain
San Antonio.
draws. The
To
villain
me,
gets fans.
they're closer to the San Antonio Spurs, but Duke is a good comparison because the Spurs had less haters than Duke does. So we'll
Exactly.
get that. Yeah,
Like
yeah,
there was
yeah.
a
But
different
But he,
feel.
but basically, what Warner Brothers Discovery basically they called the networks and said, "We're just out of the game." Like they didn't just like, "Hey, we're going to think we're going to run a
Yeah,
process."
they're
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 just
done.
we're not paying these rights fees anymore. They just flat out said, "We're cutting payment now," and
And
then
the deadline to make like the contracts is the day after opening day. It's like March
yep,
31st.
yep.
So that's coming
So
up this
yep.
month. So by
So
the end
these
of
yeah
this month and the start of April, the landscape of America's game, America's favorite pastime, is going to be vastly different. And in terms of how that views streaming sports, which is tangential to our streaming shows we've been talking about,
yeah.
that is fucking fascinating to watch.
Hmm.
Because it might mean, hey, I can, what Manfred said, they want to build out where you can buy a team specific package on Major League Baseball, which you can now, but it's
They're still
always blacked out because of the
blacked out.
RSN exclusive rights
Yep,
deals.
yep,
So that might go by the wayside, and all of a sudden, I could just buy a ticket to watch the Twins all season.
yep.
That has not existed in my life because of the
So
blackout
you,
shit.
you would gladly pay the 19.99 a month just to have the
Yeah,
Twins.
100%. Because my mom loves baseball. We'd,
Mhm.
we'd be watching Sundays baseball all the time. We just can't right now. So, and because like, and my mom, if she works at a care center, you want to bet they'd have that on the TV?
Sure.
I'd set her up on the website and I'd probably pay for it for them because I actually know a few people that live in the care center. So it's a small town. Went to my
Yep.
church. So maybe I'd talk to my dad because he's on the church board. Be like, hey, let's just pay for it because they like baseball. Like that would completely change the game, and it's gonna be a really fascinating discussion of where that goes. Because if
So
Manfred can
basically,
make that happen in a year,
in a
dude,
year,
talk about all haters gone.
well, he's one of the more maligned. He's probably the most maligned commissioner of all the sports leagues for a lot of given stuff, like the cheating scandals,
Yeah,
spider
but I
tack,
don't
and
think
like
the RSN's that's a legacy thing that predates him.
yeah, well, no, that does predate him. But what I mean is that like he's a
Yeah,
much
he's got issues.
maligned, and but shit just kind of fell in his lap within months.
Yeah,
Like
it might have just all
yeah,
here's a silver platter.
on top of the fact that they're working on, and it's controversial, but it's needed to speed up the
Oh, the pitch
game.
clock is gonna be incredible, dude.
Yeah,
I
I
can't
like it.
wait. The
Talking
that
about
bottom of
two
the
and a half
ninth,
hour games.
that bottom of the
Yes.
ninth strike three call. Did you see that one?
No, I
Where
did
it was
not.
bases loaded. I want to say it was Atlanta was down one and full count. Batter hit the pitch clock. Pitcher was ready to go. Strike three, out, game over. Utterly incredible. I've never seen anything like it in baseball. Cannot wait for it to happen in a regular season game and fans to lose their goddamn minds.
Right.
Oh, it's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be chaos in that first
But
season.
like, but just like if they can successfully shorten the games on top of like these getting actual control of Major League Baseball broadcast as a league itself, it's going to be beneficial for them because for me it's always been for a long time now it's one number one league is the NFL. Number two league is the NBA. Number three league is a far distant Major League Baseball with NHL close to them.
I do
Not
wonder how's
like
that gonna affect broadcasts because like
yeah.
is Fox going to be the only name in the game? Because right now they're the only major network that carries baseball, right? NBC doesn't.
Turner does TBS, TNT.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
do on the cable side.
But
CBS does not though.
Turner has rights, has
I do
broadcast
wonder
rights.
if teams are going to negotiate with their local OTAs. Like, is the MLB going to give them, hey, you can as long as it's not an exclusive deal?
Yeah.
I wonder if they'll let them do that.
There has to be something there where MLB gets exclusive rights back to where they don't have such a blackout problem because
Yeah,
MLB's it's been a problem for since like the NBA successfully have moved over to NBA.com, the NFL, You know,
They
the
have
red
Red Zone, they
zone.
have Sunday Ticket, like
Yeah,
it
yeah,
work, and they have the new deal with YouTube TV. Like they've been
yep.
very forward thinking with their streaming properties.
But albeit it's still hard for you to just purchase a live
Yeah,
football game package.
it's not as streamlined as what Major League Baseball could be with the
But when
team
you talk
specific
about
package.
but when you talk about money that's put into broadcast, it's MLB and the others are they're just far behind, right? So I can understand that like they want these rights because they pay them. Like as an example, years back, like 6 or 7 years ago, the Texans Raiders wild card game, ESPN paid $100 million for that game. Like there's just like it just shows you how much money is in football.
This
Ridiculous
team made
money,
tens
but
of millions of views.
yeah. So I can see like this becoming a big shift for MLB.
It's gonna
It'd be
be
nice if they had a better commissioner. I'll be honest with you, still don't believe in Manfred, but like this is a good situation for them to really catch up. You know, no
yep.
longer be the distant third to really kind of narrow that gap
Yeah.
now.
So I didn't want to talk sports too much for all my
Sure.
pop culture people, but you can't ignore the effect that that side of the streaming world might end up having on just kind of your general daily, like your
Sure.
family's lives. Like people are going to be talking about this
I mean, yeah,
as it
yeah.
affects the ability to just watch the sport.
Yep.
So I definitely wanted to talk about it a little bit because it's just, like I said, it's tangentially related to streaming rights, negotiations, writer's strike, that kind of thing. So I
Yep.
wanted to touch on it a little bit because it's just an interesting story. So we'll see what happens with that. So any other closing thoughts, Fusion?
SAG Awards this past weekend. Congratulations to everyone over at Everything Everywhere All at Once. They nailed this one. Michelle Yeoh, first Asian actress to win lead in a film. Ki Kwan, just incredible comeback story with him and Brandon Fraser the last last year and a half. But just Ki Kwan got one for best supporting male lead actor, best supporting lead male lead. And then Everything Everywhere All at Once won the best award for ensemble cast film. It was great to see them accept the award in honor of James Hong, who was on stage. I totally forgot he's 94 years old, man. Like James Hong's been around for a long time. Very poignant speech that he gave. Very sharp-witted guy at 94, I will say
Oh yeah,
that. But
he does stand up comedy.
yeah, he's a fucking funny guy. Like he's hilarious. Um, but it was great to see because the struggle of Asian actors in Hollywood is something that if you've been paying attention, it's been a long going thing for decades now that they've had a struggle. And to see really, I'm not going to say it started with Crazy Rich Asians, but I think like it kind of shifted the momentum a bit,
Yeah,
in
because like
Hollywood.
Michelle Yeoh was always there,
Yeah,
but like she was definitely not front and center like she has been of late.
no,
Beyond like the purely Eastern, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon kind of stuff.
yeah.
So
But it was great to see that, and I think that this really sets them up for to be the lead to win Best Picture, and I'm happy for that. I really want this movie to win Best Picture. I know there was some really good films last year, but for me, this one's still my favorite.
yeah.
I went back and watched it the other on Monday night, and it's just such a great movie, and it was great to see them all on stage having a good time, and they've kind of embraced Jamie Lee Curtis as one of their as a quasi Asian actor herself or whatever. The joke is she's Jamie Lee, but like just it was great to see just the energy from everybody. Great that Brandon Fraser won an award, a SAG award for The Whale as well. So yeah, some good stuff there, man. Some really good stories to tell in Hollywood right
Mhm.
now.
All right, well, I think that's where we're going to leave it here
Yeah.
for episode 62. Episode 63, when do you want to record that? Because we need to both watch Creed 3.
Watch Creed 3 maybe in 2 weeks after the finale of Last of Us.
Or do you want to do in between? So we would do Creed and Shazam, and
Okay.
then finale. I'm thinking we talk to Nick, and I think see if Chloe wants to come on. We do just a finale episode,
I
and that
like
might be a
that.
shorter one.
Okay.
And then I want to talk to Croft about John Wick 4.
I'm all for that.
She would be the perfect guest for John Wick 4. So that's
I'm
probably
so excited. So
that's
excited for that film.
that's the rough content plan for the rest of March / early April. Of course, as I mentioned, we'll be planning around March Madness.
Yes.
So stay tuned to @WaferPod on Twitter. You can hit us up on our Discord too. If you're in our Twitch chat at twitch.tv/MrWartburg, we can get you the command from when we're live. We'll be live streaming all these episodes as well. So be sure to drop that follow there. If you're listening on any podcast services, of course, reviews go a long way. Share the podcast, drop links in various Discords, Twitters, Instagram. Share the show if we're of interest to you. Share it to grow it. It's always a good thing. And of course, on YouTube, like and subscribe. Usual stuff. See ya.
Bye, everybody.